weekly live cast. This is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and I'm coming to you as usual from St. Louis on Wednesday morning. If you're joining me in the future, you're probably seeing this on YouTube. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments then or in the present right now. I'm happy to answer anything you want about me, about Stonemaier Games, as long as there's no spoilers. I don't reveal spoilers on this, but anything else I'm happy to talk about. So today, what did I want to start with? I had some random topic to start off with, but I'll start off with the chocolate of the day. Why not? So it's Easter season here in St. Louis and everywhere that celebrates Easter, and I love Cadbury mini eggs, the kind of crunchy ones with the shell on the outside. So those are definitely my chocolate of the day and chocolate of the week. Really enjoying them right now. And actually, I picked up donuts today too. So donuts will also join chocolate of the day for some dessert after lunch later today. I have a bunch of random topics today. I would say that maybe one of the bigger ones is that it looks like some people, hey, Tony, Tim, George, another Tim, multiple Tims today. One of the big topics today is that Monday was two different things. Monday was International Women's Day, and it was the second anniversary of Wingspan's retail release. And so we're celebrating this week, celebrating the anniversary this week, and the amazing women who created this game. Elizabeth, the designer, Natalia and Anna, the artists, and Christine, the graphic designer for the game. We're celebrating all of them by playing Wingspan this week. So I will probably be playing it tonight at my game night, and I would encourage you, if you have Wingspan, to play it and post maybe your favorite moment in the game on social media somewhere. I'm wearing my shirt from heroics.ca. The early bird gets whatever it wants. This is a shirt that I really, really love. That's only available in Canada right now, but I think they might start shipping in the US at some point in the future. So check that out at heroics.ca if you're interested in getting a Wingspan shirt. Or Wingspan theme shirt. It's not an official shirt. Tony mentioned that these eggs are the perfect candy for Wingspan, and I completely agree. Yeah. Tim says, I enjoyed your video on other games that you may like if you love Scythe. And yeah, that was my Sunday video this past week. I listed 10 games, 10 aspects of Scythe that I really enjoy. Scythe is a game that I designed and published. 10 aspects that I really enjoy, and one game for each of those elements that I thought that other people might want to check out if they haven't played that game, given if they already know that they love Scythe. Tim says, will you be doing that for your other games? I've already done one for Wingspan, a game obviously that I did not design, but I was instrumental in developing Wingspan, and I published it. Did that for Wingspan back in November, December, I think. And I have one in the works for Viticulture and Tapestry, and I will hopefully continue to do it. As long as there's interest in that series of games, of videos, I will continue to do that for all Stonemaier games. It'll take a while. I don't want to... The purpose of my videos isn't to focus on Stonemaier games. It's to focus on game design. And so I don't want to do them too often, but probably maybe once a month or once every couple months I'll do one. Yeah. Francesco's joining me today, wonderful game designer Francesco Testini. Nathan says, last week you mentioned that you played a cooperative game called The Loop. I've heard good things about it and wondered what you thought of it. I have a video coming out about The Loop in a few weeks, Nathan. I filmed it, but I'm ahead on videos right now. But the short of it is that I thought it had some really clever mechanisms. It didn't entirely feel like a time loop game, which I was hoping for, because time loop fiction is one of my favorite forms of fiction. In fact, I just watched a movie called Boss Level this past weekend, which I think is the newest entry into time loop movies. And it was quite enjoyable. Very violent, but very good. And so the loop, the cooperative game, The Loop, didn't quite feel that way, but it did have one mechanism that did feel that way. And basically, you can spend energy on your turn to refresh any cards that you've already used that turn of a single type. So on any given turn, typically you have 3 cards in hand. You're playing 3 cards, you're activating them, and then if you use an energy, you can refresh any of those cards that share the same type. And so it kind of feels like you're going back in the past to not necessarily redo something, but to do more of something. And I really like that mechanism as itself, and it seemed to tie into the theme of The Loop a little bit as well. Yeah, so those are my preliminary thoughts. You can see more in my video when I put that out in the near future. Miles says, what's your favorite St. Louis donut spot? There are quite a few pretty good donut places in St. Louis. I'm not a huge donut guy, but Megan loves them, and so I do enjoy them too. I would say, there's a place in Maplewood that is really good called Strange Donuts. I think it's Strange Donuts. They're very good, and they do some weird stuff with donuts. It's a lot of fun. I have really been liking Pharaoh's donuts. I think Pharaoh makes really good donuts. I generally prefer whatever the original donut type is instead of the cake donut. The cake donut's the one that's a little thicker in consistency. I like the lighter, fluffy form of donut. And so any place that serves that form of donut, I generally like. I can't even really tell the difference all that much between various donuts of that type. Yeah, yeah. But those are a few to check out, Miles, now that you're in St. Louis. Tim says, Beth Sobel worked on Wingspan, didn't she? Beth Sobel did the player mats in Wingspan. Yeah, she definitely was an artist for Wingspan. I think sometimes people confuse Natalia and Anna, the sheer amount of work that Natalia and Anna put into the game. And Beth goes out of her way to correct people when people do that, which I appreciate her doing. But yeah, Natalia and Anna are definitely the lead and primary artists for Wingspan. They did all of the birds. They spent probably thousands of hours illustrating the birds. And Beth did the playmats for Wingspan, which are a big part of the game too. You are always looking at those playmats, so I appreciate Beth for doing that too. Chris is joining us today. Chris from the Charity Gamer. He says, thanks for coming on again last night. So Chris was doing a playthrough on Tabletopia of Red Rising last night, and I popped in just to say hi to chat for a few minutes with him and Justin and Daniel and was it James? Was James the last one? And so we had a good time. They were playing the game. They were playing Red Rising. I just popped in to say hi and hang out for a few minutes, and that was definitely fun. Thank you so much for doing that, Chris. Stefan says, thanks for helping me bump Red Rising to the top of my reading list. Oh yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. I obviously love the books enough to design a game around it and to publish a game around it. I am working through Dune myself right now. I'm about 80% of the way through Dune. First time read of the first book in the Dune series. And I'll probably, unless you recommend otherwise, I'll probably just read the first book. I've heard it comes to a satisfying conclusion, even though the series does continue. But that's my plan right now, unless anyone recommends otherwise. Um, Scott says, Rado mentioned in his review of Red Rising that you gave credit when it was due in the rulebook. He's probably referring to maybe the IP Red Rising, of course, but also to Fantasy Realms. I definitely credit Fantasy Realms and in the Red Rising rulebook for being the inspiration for the game. He says he also called out other publishers and designers to do the same. How much do you think other games impact the design decisions of games in development? Yeah, interesting question here. And I might address one thing that you didn't ask, which is, do I think that other designers and publishers should do that? I don't think they're ever under any obligation to do so. I have done so in the rulebook whenever there's a game that really, really inspires another game that I've designed. I believe in Charterstone, I credit Rob Davio for creating the legacy format of games. I think I do that in the rulebook, or maybe it's on the side of the box. Um, I don't think it's always necessary. I think there are other ways to do it, like on your website, on design diaries. You can always credit other games in other ways. But and Scott, your question is, how much do you think other games impact the design decisions of games in development? I think almost every game is inspired or influenced in some way by at least a few other games. Sometimes it's just like a little nod, a little bit of inspiration, and sometimes it's a pretty deep inspiration, like with Fantasy Realms. Fantasy Realms, that the core mechanism of discarding a card and gaining a card, that's a big part of Red Rising. Red Rising definitely takes it to other levels because Fantasy Realms is a much shorter, lighter filler game. But yeah, it was definitely the foundation there. So I think I think most games are probably influenced in some way by a couple other games. And I think it's always nice to just give credit. Like I don't think it takes away. It's not creating any competition for your game. There's no legal ramifications for saying this game influenced me or this game had a positive impact on me. I think that's a wonderful thing to share, and I love when designers do that. Ilya says, "What's a release you're excited for in the board game world?" Well, one that I was really excited about that I did recently get was Royal Visit. Royal Visit is a two-player tug of war game from Reiner Knizia. I love tug of war games, and I got it very recently and played it with Megan over this past weekend. So that's a brand new release that I was really excited about. I also got to play Praga Caput Regni the other day. That was a major game that was released last year, but it's brand new to me, and I had a great time playing that. Very rewarding game. It actually definitely had an impact on a video that I filmed yesterday about games that are rewarding, games that are constantly giving you more and better stuff and constantly give you progression and never pull you back, never punish you, never force you to do anything. So Praga, I think, was a great uh, 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 part of that list, great inspiration for that list. Let's see, I'll answer one other question and then I'll come back to my list of random topics, none of which are particularly important today, so I'll mostly focus on questions. Critty says, are you backing Night Market and Everdell? What am I backing right now? I am following Everdell. I don't know much about Night Market. I haven't backed Everdell yet. I did get to play Everdell this past weekend though, and that was a lot of fun. Let's see. I'm backing Eternal Palace. I'm backing Caper Europe, Gift of Tulips, Crafting Arzium, and Hunted Woad Ridge. Not Wood Ridge, Woad Ridge. Those are the games that I'm backing right now. And I'm paying attention to Everdell. I actually posted on Instagram about that today, and I need to read through the comments. I haven't got to that yet. But my only hesitation really was there. I am very new to Everdell. I played it once years ago, and then I just got a copy and played it once. And so to me, the game is fresh and new, and there's so much replayability in it right now. And so I'm not at the point in the game that I'm itching for expansions. And so I am personally leaning towards just waiting for expansions, waiting to get these expansions later if I feel the need to expand the game, because it's so fresh to me. But I'm open to be. Oh, you guys get to see Walter come out of the litter box live. There you go. Thanks, Walter. Um, but I'm open to being persuaded if there's something about these expansions that are just like I really need to get them now. I'm definitely open to that. A couple other random topics. Let me throw this out there. Again, this week is Wingspan's second year anniversary, so feel free to celebrate Wingspan and the amazing women who brought this game to life, because this is Monday was International Women's Day, and this is, let's make it International Women's Week. So feel free to play and share your memorable moments in Wingspan this week if you'd like. I've got the weather in St. Louis has been beautiful over the last week. So since we last talked, I've actually played disc golf 3 times. And I came super, super close yesterday in the wind to getting my first ace. I'm not very good at disc golf, and so getting an ace at all seems fairly far-fetched, but I had a disc hit the bottom rim, or the top of the bottom rim of a basket from about 220 feet away. It was exhilarating. I've been replaying it in my head ever since. Really, really fun moment, and hopefully I'll have another chance at getting an ace in the future. Other games that I played this recently were Draftosaurus and Quetzal, both on Board Game Arena. And I'll probably be playing Wingspan tonight. We'll see what I play at Wingspan. And also Red Rising. Yes, so we have 2 pre-orders that kind of happened simultaneously. One was just an order for the Wingspan Speckled Egg. So if you ordered this by itself, you have probably seen a shipping notification, and if not, you will see one very soon. And the other thing was for Red Rising, which is behind me here. You can kind of see it down there. Red Rising will very soon be shipping to customers in Australia and New Zealand, followed by customers in Europe, and then Canada and the US in early April. All this is dependent on freight shipping, but freight shipping just happened to be a little faster for Australia, happened to be a little faster for the UK, and happens to be exceedingly slow this time for the US and Canada. It departed from China in early February and has yet to hit port yet. So that's just the state of freight shipping. I appreciate your patience, and but we do have those games in the fulfillment process right now. I don't want to miss out on any questions, so I'll jump over to questions and I will come back to other topics in a minute. Let's see. Daniel says, super curious if you have any tips for licensing IPs. Yes, Daniel. Yeah, thank you for asking about that. I actually have a blog post that I wrote 2 weeks ago, if you check it out, and it tells the story of the Red Rising IP and the things that I thought about. Let me see if I can give you one tip live here that I can think about off my mind. One tip that I tried to keep in mind was to respect the time of the IP holder, of Pierce Brown, who wrote the Red Rising books. So I really tried to lay a foundation very early on and establish that I was not going to bother Pierce, that I wanted him to do what he does best, which is write Red Rising books, and I would handle everything else for the game. And so I only reached out to him a few times, at key times, like for the cover. I gave him an early fancy prototype that really looked like the final game, but wasn't quite finished yet, so that he could catch anything if he wanted to that wasn't representative of his world. Little things like that. But that's one thing that I try to keep in mind. Respecting the time of the IP holder, not expecting them to market the game, to do anything for the game itself, but and to involve them if they wanted to be involved. But check out the blog post 2 weeks ago. I think that'll answer a lot of questions that you might have about getting an IP. Let's see, just scrolling down here looking for questions. Zane says, how difficult is it to use a major IP in a Kickstarter game as opposed to going through a publisher? Is that even possible? That's a good question, Zane. It actually ties into the question a second ago about IPs. I I don't think there's really a connection to Kickstarter or publishing or not. I think the one thing you might run into is that if you approach a major IP, say you approach Disney and say you want to publish another Star Wars game because we need another Star Wars game, um, and you are someone who has never published anything in the past, and you don't have a design portfolio, Disney's probably not going to give you that Star Wars IP to use in your game. And so working with a much bigger publisher that does have clout, does have history, maybe has a history with Disney in particular, they might have a better chance. But for a smaller IP that you're really passionate about, I don't think it ever hurts to reach out to the holder of that IP and say, I love what you created. I love what you're doing. You've inspired me to design this game. I don't know what'll come of it. Right now, it's just a fun project that I'm working on. And thank you for creating this IP. I never think that hurts to say, and that can establish the groundwork for something in the future. And so even if you're a first-time Kickstarter creator or first-time designer, feel free to do that, especially for a smaller IP. You can also try it for a bigger IP, but I don't know if you'll get a response from a bigger IP. Connor's joining us near the end of his Kickstarter project for Block and Key. Connor, congrats on the success of that project. Let's see, Jazz is joining us today. Always great to see Jazz here from the Lobby of Hobbies, the Hobby of Lobbies. I always confuse that name, Jazz. Giovanni says, if I ordered Red Rising and ordered the metal coins and scythe upgrades on the same order, will I have to wait till April to get the scythe stuff in one order? Yeah, whenever you place an order, you are kind of pre-packaging that order from us, and we will ship it as soon as the latest product in that order is ready. So if you ever want something sooner, like if you know, like with Red Rising, that it's a pre-order that we expected to ship in April, if you wanted that sooner, then you would have needed to separate the order into multiple orders, paying shipping multiple times. But because you consolidated, you'll receive things together, and maybe a little later than you would have received a few of those things, but you'll definitely saved on shipping by doing that. Chad says, is the freight shipping for Red Rising on schedule? Yeah, I may have missed this question when I was talking about it a few minutes ago, but yes, Chad, I would say it's on schedule based on what we knew when we launched the pre-order, which at the time was that the shipping was later than we had hoped for Canada and the US. But we knew that going into the pre-order. That's why we said that shipping would happen most likely in April. And if we got lucky, then it would be a little bit earlier. Australia, New Zealand, and the UK and Europe are definitely on the early side of that. They're a little bit ahead of schedule. But we'll see if that pans out. I mean, ports can get clogged all of a sudden. Things can get caught in customs. So I really don't know until your orders actually ship, and you won't really know until you get that order notification. But we'll keep you updated if there are any actual delays based on information that we didn't have when we started the pre-order. Ian says, any hints on the next game this year? Actually, yeah, I can just say it because it's out there publicly. I've very publicly said that Rolling Realms, the printed version of Rolling Realms, will be our next game, or yeah, our final game. We only do 1 or 2 games a year for 2021. So that is, that's the next game. You can see that on the news page of our website and on our e-newsletter where I track the progress of our different projects. Geronimo says he usually listens offline, but he's joining us live today. Awesome. Thank you for joining us live. He says, it was just a very nice comment here. Just wanted to thank you for your contributions to the hobby. Your transparency and candid insights to publishing and designing is greatly appreciated. I look forward to it every week. Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. Yeah, thank you. That really, thank you for saying that. Yeah. Jazz says that Everdell is one of his favorite games, so he's backing right now. Looks like Walter wants to say hi, actually. Hey, buddy. You want to say hi to everybody? No? No, you want food? Okay. Morgan says, are there any older games with great mechanisms in which you would enjoy seeing an art or I can't see the final word here, presentation refresh. Any older games that I would like to see that? Oh, Walter wants to get down. Um, I would say there's a game called Tribune that I really love that I think could use an art refresh, and I think it actually is getting a new edition, or maybe it's even already out. I haven't seen the new edition yet, but Tribune comes to mind for that. Uh, I don't know. That's the first one off the top of my head. I think Tribune is a very solid game, and actually reminds me a lot of Quetzal, a game that is a beautiful game that is pretty new and is on Board Game Arena right now. If you want to check it out, that's one that I'm tempted to get a physical copy of because it's so beautiful. And you actually get to roll meeples in Quetzal, which I think will be much more satisfying on the tabletop than on Board Game Arena. Ernani says, "Have I ever played Scythe two-player with Megan?" I don't think we have played Scythe two-player, but we should try that sometime. See how it goes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely played Scythe two-player, but not with Megan. Rafal says, "Have I ever tried playing Android Netrunner? And if so, what are your thoughts on it?" I probably have a very old video on Android Netrunner because I have played it once, and I don't know if that was before the times when I was doing my game design videos, but it's quite possible. And so I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I definitely did not go deep into it like a lot of people. I thought it was a very interesting asymmetric game with a very steep learning curve. And so my first experience was one of respect and appreciation, but also I had very little idea of what was going on in terms of strategy. I understood the core concepts, but there's a lot going on in that game, especially with the various keywords and mechanisms that are all tied into each other. Yeah. Chad says, "Are there any other books that you would like to make a game out of?" There have been a few that I've thought about, but and here's the tricky thing with an IP. So, for example, there's a series that I really love that I highly recommend called The Emperor's Blades, and it focuses on it's a fantasy world, focuses on small groups of people. I forget the actual term in the book. It's either four or five people that that work for the I guess the air force of this world. But instead of planes, they all get on this giant bird and they fly around the world. They patrol the world on this giant bird, and so they kind of act as a little cooperative group connected to this bird. I love these books. I love this world. I love that idea. It inspired me right away for a cooperative game. But, and this is the tricky thing with an IP, the the books unfortunately did not really take off all that much. I don't think they have a huge readership. Um, and while one of my goals for Red Rising was to expose new people to the books, I wanted more people to know about these books. I also knew that the books had done fairly well, and so it was a fairly it was maybe a good business decision that I picked a book series like that already had a great fan base that I could draw into the world of gaming and into the Red Rising game itself. So there are other books. Emperor's Blades is just an example of them, but they have to kind of reach a critical mass, I think. I don't want them to be too popular. I don't, again, Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but I don't need to design a Star Wars game. There are plenty of Star Wars games out there. But I also don't want them to be so unknown that they don't have a passionate existing fan base that I could bring in to the game that way. So that's the challenge here. That's kind of a sweet spot. I think Red Rising is around that sweet spot for a book series in that way. And also for Red Rising, there isn't a movie or a TV series yet, but there could be. I think there easily could be someday. Yeah. Jazz also recommended that I back the game Three Sisters. I did see that on Kickstarter yesterday, and I was intrigued. I looked into it. I think I'm following it right now, but it wasn't an insta-back, but one that definitely intrigued me. Especially because of all the great things I've heard about Fleet the Dice game, which I've never gotten to play, but I've heard great things about that. Oh, Joshua actually followed up just after Jazz to say, did I see Three Sisters? It's neat to see seasoned designers starting their own company. Oh, I didn't know Matt Riddle was starting his own company to publish that game. Tim says, I've been wanting to play Praga Caput Regni. What were your thoughts on the 3D parts of the board? Yeah, but if you look at the pictures of Praga Caput Regni, there are some very interesting 3D elements to the board. One, there's a bridge that crosses over a river, and it's this cardboard bridge that you put together and you put across the river. Another was this giant stadium-like structure that you're using to move cubes around. And in some ways it was very clever because there are times where you move cubes up a level and the designer had to convey that you need to pay something to move up that level, and so the cost for it is printed on the vertical part, the vertical divider that you are moving the cube over onto the next level. However, the downside of something like this is that it ends up blocking the physical structure, blocks some of the icons that are around it, and they did their best to show those icons. Some are printed on this on the structure itself, some are printed on the board, but it was a little bit hard to see from my angle in particular, and so I ended up mostly ignoring that structure. The bridge I really liked though. Let's see. Just looking for questions here. I'll jump back to my topics real quick before I get to Ernani's question over here. What other topics do I have? Two posts very recently, the blog post that I did recently. One last Friday was about why I kept the price secret and why I generally keep the pre-order price and the MSRP secret for our games leading up to the release. And check out the article for details. I go into a lot of details about it, but the general answer is that the pre-order price uh, can change a lot based on what I learn during the announcement process for any product. Doesn't change by huge amount, by like tens of dollars. It doesn't change by that much, but by a couple dollars here and there, it can definitely change throughout that process based on things that I learn throughout that process, other factors that I need to factor in. And so the reason that I don't announce the price early is that I want the flexibility to change that price, often in a way that benefits you, the consumer, the buyer, the pre-order customer. So that's something to maybe keep in mind. If I know everyone has budgets, you want to know the price of the game in advance. I get that. And so in the future, I think I'll be giving an upper range. I'll say it's going to be no more expensive than $80. And you might be pleasantly surprised when it's like $50. It's a lot less, but at least then you have a price ceiling to work with. But yeah, I I appreciate, for any of you who didn't badger me about that price. I really appreciate it because it gives me the flexibility to change that price in a way that can be better for you in the end when we actually launch the pre-order. So thank you for that. Badgering is probably a harsh word, but I did get a lot of people asking me for the price, and I appreciate your curiosity. But in the end, that flexibility, I really do appreciate it. I also did a blog post, or actually, we had a guest blog post on Monday from Carly, an Instagram friend who posts about her love of board games all the time. It's a wonderful Instagram feed to follow if you love games. And Carly wrote about, she recently taught me something about Instagram stories that I had no idea about. And so I invited her to write a guest post. And so she wrote a lot about her tactics and methods, just as kind of a fan of board games. I don't think Carly would even really call herself a reviewer at this point. She's just a fan of board games who loves talking about games on Instagram. And she gives a lot of great tips there if that falls into a category, if that feels right to you as well. If you're on Instagram and you just love talking about board games, check out this blog post on Monday, guest post by Carly, to hear her thoughts about how to share your love with more people through Instagram. Yeah, two other small topics, but I'll come back to those in a second. Ernani's question is, how do you compare Praga and Underwater Cities? Underwater Cities is one of my favorite games ever. That's Ernani talking. Yeah, they're both by the same designer. I can definitely see the same design philosophy or similar design philosophy through both of them, which is that Vladimir Suchy is a designer who loves to reward players multiple times on your turn. There are often things that you're doing that give you 2 rewards on your turn. I love that in games. I love double rewards. And Underwater Cities definitely does that. Oftentimes if you play a card that matches the color of the action that you choose, you get the benefits of the card and the action. Double benefit. Even on some of the actions, you're getting more than one benefit. And Praga has the same design philosophy. On your turn, you're choosing a tile from a rondel. You're gaining one of the benefits on that tile, and you're gaining the benefit that was linked to that tile on the rondel itself. Double benefit, feels good, feels rewarding. Very few punishing elements in the game. I would say there are no punishing elements in Praga. There aren't negative victory points. There aren't things like that. And the game doesn't force you to do anything. You can do a number of different things and feel good about it and have a chance at winning. So yeah, actually no, there is actually in Underwater Cities there is one cost. You have to supply something with seaweed, I think every or kelp or something. What are the green resources? You have to supply that every round. That's on the edge of not punishing, but that wouldn't qualify for my list of rewarding games because it's the game saying you have to do this or you'll be punished a little bit. But Praga doesn't have anything like that. Yeah. Ivan says that book one from Dune is a little bit like book two from Red Rising. Okay, I can see that a little bit. Maybe you're saying that the world really opens up after that and gets a lot bigger instead of just being on the one planet. Maybe. Par says greetings from Sweden. He's also backing Eternal Palace. As the dice lover I am, what's your favorite mechanism in that game? Oh, I don't know yet. I haven't played Eternal Palace. I've just backed it because it looked pretty cool. What was the thing that stood out about it? I do love dice worker placement or dice placement. Um, I don't know, just look like a good solid Euro game. The theme looked nice to me. I can't say there was a mechanism that really jumped out that sold me on it, but I kind of trust that publisher and the game just overall looked good to me, and I thought the price was fair. Yeah. Zane says, happy Mar 10 Day. Do you like or have you played any Nintendo games? Uh, Not many, but I do have a favorite, a clear favorite, which is Mario Kart 64. Played that a ton in college and absolutely loved it, and that's definitely my favorite Nintendo game. What about you? What about anybody else here? I didn't know that today was associated with Nintendo, but if you have a favorite Nintendo game, feel free to mention it in the comments. Runer says, he says, my girlfriend says our next game has to be easy to set up and quick to tidy up. Do you have any new games coming to fit her demands, or do you have any recommendations? I do have a video, Runer, about games that are easy to set up. So if you check my YouTube channel, or if anyone else wants to check and post a link here for easy setup, I think you'll on my channel you will find a video about that. I can't remember the top games that I recommended for that off the top of my head, although I can look it up pretty easily. As for our games, I generally try to keep our games fairly easy to set up. I think that's a key part of accessibility in games. Red Rising is exceptionally easy to set up. It's very, very easy to set up. Even Wingspan doesn't take all that long to set up, but maybe I'm spoiled a little bit for the different components. But I think like the little resource containers help with the setup in Wingspan. What else is super easy to set up? And tidy up. You mentioned cleanup too. Red Rising is probably at the top of that list. Between Two Cities is actually very easy to set up and clean up because all the tiles are just in a giant box. They're shuffled in the box. You just pull them out. Between Two Castles, also very easy to set up and clean up because, especially setup. Between Two Castles setup is the fastest of almost any game that I played. We designed the insert to hold exactly 9 tiles per section. Per player section, at least in the insert. There are some other sections in there, but per player section. So all you have to do to set up the game is take out 9 of those tiles, take out one section of tiles, take a castle token, take a throne room, and start playing. That's it. Cleanup takes a little bit more time because you're going to have to shuffle out the tiles and put them back in those sections, but even that doesn't take very long. So yeah, we have a couple game recommendations there. Let me look at my list here to see. Set up. Easy to set up. The top 2 that I picked for my list were Azul Summer Pavilion and Fantasy Realms. Those were the top 2 that I picked there. Jeffrey says, do you have any thoughts on the new Everdell expansions? Yeah, the ones on Kickstarter right now. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the livecast that I am fairly new to Everdell. I played a long time ago, very recently played again and got a copy of the game because I wanted to play again and give it another chance. And I really actually did enjoy my recent play of it. I'm too new, I think, to really know much about what else I want to see in the world of Everdell. I love Andrew Bosley's art, though, and I don't know. I'm curious about them. I'm kind of following along the campaign, but I don't really know. I don't know what I need at this point or what I want, given that I'm so new to the game. Nathan says that he's also a disc golfer. He says he's been super close to an ace for 5 years now. Ah, that's so long, Nathan. But I'm glad you've gotten close, and hopefully you get that ace. Let me know when you get that ace. Bruce says, what's my favorite book in the Red Rising series? He just started audiobook 2. Prepare for a bit of a leap in book 2, Bruce. The world gets a lot bigger after book 1. I think I will always look fondly back at book 1. That's probably my favorite. But I also really did love book 3. It had some moments, especially at the beginning, I think starts off a little bit rough, and then just the scope of it and the moments, that there's some incredible moments in book 3. It's real close for me between books 1 and book 3. And book 2 is good too. But some of the biggest moments for me are in book 3 and in book 1. Yeah. Let's see. Karen says she played Wingspan solo for the first time this week, and she says she was impressed at how smoothly the play was. That's great. That's great to hear. I was just talking to Morton this morning from Automa Factory. Morton is in charge of the solo versions of our games, and David Studley, his often co-designer. David focused a lot on Wingspan, so I'm glad you had a good experience with that. Let's see. Thank you, Cody, for finding that post about working with an IP. Connor says, how long would the current shipping prices need to become the norm before you would consider changing your MSRP due to landed costs on new games or reprints? Connor, I'll probably have to do a deep dive into the math at some point, but I guess I just haven't seen them increase so much that it would impact an MSRP. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? You're a publisher as well. What do you think? How much of an impact have you seen on a per unit level for that increase? If say in the past you've been able to ship a game for $1 freight shipping, what are you seeing now for freight shipping to Canada? I think you're in Canada. Let's see, just looking through. Well, actually, I'll cover my final two random topics. One is almost completely inconsequential. Because of the weather in St. Louis, we've gotten a random craving for milkshakes recently. So we got a Lucky Charms milkshake for St. Patrick's Day from High Point drive-through or drive-in a couple of days ago. We got that. And we got a s'mores milkshake. We also went to DQ. Megan had a very specific DQ craving. So I went to DQ and that's Dairy Queen, for those of you who don't know, and got some milkshakes from there. And also, don't have a lot of news about Stonemaier Games, but we did recently get a bookkeeper, which is something that I never thought I would want or need. But our bookkeeper is amazing. She has been so helpful already. Just like a couple weeks into the process, I pay royalties to our designers once a month, and I love the end part of that. I love being able to send money to our designers. That always feels good. But the calculation process and all the bookkeeping that goes into calculating those amounts is not my favorite part of my job. But the bookkeeper now does it for me, and she does it so well. And so I am loving that, absolutely loving that. So yeah, I would recommend that. If you don't enjoy that part of running a business, I would recommend considering a bookkeeper. And I have someone to recommend if you want. I think she's open to new clients. And so feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in that. I should probably do a blog post about bookkeeping to recommend her if she's interested in that. I'll check with her. All right, I think that's all the topics I was going to cover today. Again, it's Wingspan week, second year anniversary for Wingspan. So play Wingspan this week and share your favorite moments from your play of it. I'll focus the rest of this chat on just questions here. Joseph says, any favorite... Oh, actually, someone made a note about Tapestry, but I need to make a note about that. Thank you for noting that. You made me think of something. Kurt, thank you, Kurt. Joseph says, any favorite video game you would like to see a board game version of? He says, are you excited for the Skyrim board game? I'm intrigued by it. Oftentimes, though, I see, this is the odd thing about these games, in a lot of video games, you walk around just like fighting stuff. And sometimes there's a game like Skyrim where I haven't played Skyrim, but I don't think this is a game where you are only going around fighting stuff. There's a lot of other stuff that you do in Skyrim. But sometimes I think when it comes into board game form, the fighting, the combat is the focus. It becomes a tactical combat game all of a sudden, even though the original form of the game wasn't only a tactical combat game. And so I'm always curious to see if designers have kind of the guts to break away from that and the insight to break away from that sole part of the game. Is there a video game? Actually, there is a video game. Jetpack Joyride is a little mobile game that I thought was fine. I played it a few times, and I really enjoyed the tabletop version of it. I think they did a fantastic job of capturing the essence of the digital game in tabletop form. I guess your question, Joseph, is are there any other video games I would like to see in tabletop form? I don't play a lot of video games. So, I mean, Slay the Spire, I'm intrigued by that. I'm definitely intrigued by that game, the cooperative version of what is a single-player game in digital format. I'm curious to see what they do with that. We'll see about that one. And that one's not that far out. Zane says, even though it's not your style of game, have you heard about Primal the Awakening? It's a Kickstarter co-op monster hunting game and has some really interesting card play with very simple grid movement. I did watch a video on Board Game Co. about it, and it was interesting. tactical combat games are not really my go-to style of game. But I do like that this game, and this is a good example of what I was just talking about for video games. I like that Primal pretty much said, it isn't pretending to be anything else. It is just a game where you are fighting a monster and you're doing it cooperatively. And I agree. Based on what I saw in the video, the mechanisms are fairly simple with depth and complexity coming from the variety of cards, the different characters, the different monsters, things like that. So I'll play it once. I mean, it is probably just not my style of game to just be fighting something for a couple hours. I'd rather be building something. But I'm intrigued by it. I'll give it a try. Yeah. Patrick says, for my Facebook gaming group I host, I am doing a March Madness of Board Games tournament. We just did our selection show, and 4 Stonemaier games made it into the event. Oh, that's awesome. He says, Jamie, are you a sports fan? If so, what sports do you follow? I do follow a bunch of different sports, yeah. I follow, in terms of soccer, I love soccer. I played soccer most of my life. I follow English Premier League mostly, and I also follow Champions League and the U.S. women's team. I follow them, of course, and World Cup soccer and the Euro Cup every couple of years, every 4 years, whenever they do it. 4 years? Yeah, every 4 years. And I follow NFL football. I follow college football. I follow NBA basketball a little bit. I don't really watch it, but I like seeing the highlights. I do love March Madness basketball. I love the men's basketball tournament. And what else? I feel like I'm missing. Oh, and sumo wrestling. I've gotten really into sumo wrestling over the last year. Really, really enjoy sumo wrestling. I think those are the main sports. I check ESPN.com frequently throughout the day about various sports, but most of them, like I don't really follow hockey. I don't really follow golf. Yeah. So, yeah, football, soccer, and basketball, I follow quite a bit. Tara says, does Walter fit in my Wingspan box top? Walter does. Yeah, Walter's very floofy, but he's not a very big cat once you get through all that hair. Yeah, so he does fit in the box. Biddy is much more of a box cat than Walter. Biddy will get into any box. Walter doesn't. It's kind of hit and miss if he gets into a box, but he does enjoy boxes in general. Attila says, when can we expect news about the Between Two Castles expansion? Most likely in early April. I think I'm probably planning on an April 6th e-newsletter when I start to talk about it, but it does depend a little bit on how production finishes up, how freight shipping goes. If it's looking like more of a early June pre-order rather than early May pre-order, I might bump the announcement back to May, but soon. So probably in a few weeks, but maybe in a month and a half. Steven says that he's enjoyed reading Red Rising for the first time. Thanks for giving that a try, Steven. And everyone else who's tried the books for the first time. That makes me so happy to hear, because that's a big part of the reason why I co-designed and published the Red Rising game. Tim says, have I considered writing a novel based on Euphoria or any of your other games? I know you said you've written a novel in the past. I have written a novel. I've written some short stories. At this point in my career, my all of my creative energy is on board games and not on writing, not on fiction, at least. I do write a lot of blog posts. And so at some point in the future, maybe I will delve into these worlds or delve back into long-form fiction, but that currently isn't my creative focus. Yeah. Nathan says he recently finished Dune as well, the book that I'm currently reading, and he's taking a break to read Red Rising. That's awesome. Hamam says, is the author of Red Rising into modern board games? Pierce is into modern board games. I don't think he's done a deep dive into it yet, but I know he has played Scythe a number of times. The last I heard from him, he was undefeated at Scythe. And he mentioned, I don't remember the other ones offhand, but he definitely mentioned some very good modern board games that he's played, and a few modern video games that he's played as well. Martin says it well here. He says, so the Red Rising board game is kind of my way to share what I love with the masses. I think that's a great way to say it. Yeah, I mean, I had 2 goals with the game. One was to share the books with my fellow gamers, and the other was to share modern games, starting with Red Rising, with fellow fans of Red Rising. Yeah, so just kind of sharing some love there both ways. Aqua says, have I read anything by N.K. Jemisin? I have. She is an amazing author. I've read, I was confused the 2 series. I've read the Broken Earth series, I think is the name of it. I've read that. And then I've read the series Broken Earth. maybe Broken World. Um, and then I've read the series where that had I forget the name of it, but it's a fantasy world in which there are gods that kind of take the form as people, and they are held captive, or at least some of them are held captive. And that to me was a very interesting hook. And I really, really enjoyed that series. I don't know, Aqua, if you remember the name of that series offhand, feel free to share it here. I'm forgetting the name of those books right now. But yes, she is an amazing author. And I think I have another book by her on my to read list right now. So if you have any others to recommend, feel free to do so in the comments below. Zane says, I know you always talk against it, but I would buy a Stonemaier Star Wars game in a second. I appreciate that, and I really do. I don't mean to always use that as the example because I love Star Wars. I've been a fan of Star Wars for most of my life. Um, I use it as an example of like an IP that doesn't necessarily need another game in that series. I think Marvel is getting to that level too. As much as I love Marvel, I don't really need another Marvel game. Um, and Lord of the Rings falls into that category too. Although I say that, and then someday someone's going to come out with like an amazing like Euro game in one of those worlds, and I'm going to be all over it. Kind of like what Dune Imperium did. Magnus says the Red Rising box kind of looks like the Netflix intro. It kind of does. I genuinely think it is a complete coincidence. The cover was created by Jackie Davis, and I don't know if Jackie had any thought of Netflix's introduction when she created the box for Red Rising. Maybe it was there somewhere in her subconscious, but it was definitely not intentional as far as I'm aware. Jackie is also the artist who did the backs of the cards for the mamas and papas of for Viticulture, and people you may have seen this online. People often look at the papa locket on the back of the card and think that it is Loki. I forget the actor's name, but the guy who plays Loki in the Marvel movies. And it's not. It's just a guy. It's just a random person that Jackie used for the locket. But it does look very similar to the Loki actor. So I guess Jackie has maybe some subconscious influences there. Chad says, I gotta say, I'm very thankful during these difficult financial times that you made an already affordable game even more affordable for champions. Thank you, Chad. I'm repeating this comment out loud, even though it isn't a question, because that was definitely my goal and is my goal for all of our games. But for Red Rising, that was not only the goal for the pre-order pricing and the champion pricing, but also one of the main reasons that we made two versions of the game. A nice collector's edition if you want to spend a little bit more, and also a $40, probably be discounted by retailers, even below that, $40 retail version of the game, which I know times are definitely tough. Even $40 can be a lot for some people, for a lot of people. Yeah, we were trying to keep that in mind to offer a more affordable version of the game for those who want it. Yeah. Hey, Dusty's here from the mill. Dusty says, maybe someone's already asked this, but what's next for Stonemaier Games? To follow up on the question, have you worked on anything lately that has you really excited? Doesn't have to be game related. What's next for Stonemaier Games? Next up, oh, it looks like I'm fairly far behind on questions. I'm sorry, everyone who's asking questions and waiting for me to answer. I'm 17 minutes behind on questions right now. What's next is the Between Two Castles expansion, which I'll hopefully start talking about in April. And am I working on anything lately that has me really excited? Yeah, I mean, the ongoing work in process that I am incredibly excited about and have already publicly talked about a little bit is my cooperative exploration game, cooperative open world exploration game. And that's the one that I think about all the time and continually excited about. But it is so big that it has taken me a long time and probably will continue to take me a while to get it done and get it right. James says, you spoke about Kickstarter and the price of products the other week and its impact on sales versus rewards. So I wondered what your take was on the prices for the Everdell Complete Collection, especially compared to something like that of Eternal Palace. Yeah, I saw the Everdell Complete Collection. They marked it as $350, but discounted for the campaign down to $199. And that price comparison does seem fairly reasonable. In fact, it seems so reasonable that I wonder if anyone who has already bought pretty deep into Everdell will feel like they overspent. That's always my worry when I see a consolidated a complete collection price like that. So I'm wondering if anyone is watching this and you've already gone deep into Everdell and you saw that price, did that make you feel good, bad? Did you not care because you've already gotten so much enjoyment out of Everdell? I'm genuinely curious about that. This isn't a judgment call. It's just something that I think about a lot, and I'm wondering if people have that reaction when they see a price like that. Briss says, any recently Kickstarter projects that I'm excited about? Yeah, I'll pull it back up. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. Um, I am currently backing and excited about Eternal Palace, Caper Europe, Gift of Tulips, Crafting Arzium, and Hunted Woad Ridge. Yeah. Connor says, design strategy is something you discuss often. I'm curious to know, what do you see as my design strategy? This makes me think of English class in the high school when the teacher says the author wants you to think X, Y, Z. What I think is Connor's design strategy. So the game of Connor's that I am the most familiar with is Summit. Summit is one of my favorite cooperative games. Excellent, excellent cooperative game. It's also actually a competitive game as well, but I've only played the cooperative version because I just like that version so much. What do I see as your design philosophy, Connor? Uh, I don't know exactly. I'd be curious to hear it in your words, but I would say at least some part of it is memorable moments. Um, that's one of my key takeaways when I play Summit. I think that you've designed a number of event cards in that game that create impactful mechanical moments that are also memorable in thematic ways as well. And so I don't know if that's what you're aiming for, because I also do see a lot of spatial things in your works, especially Block and Key and Summit. There's a lot of spatial strategy in those games. But yeah, those memorable moments, I think, you, I think that's got to be part of it somewhere. Would you say that's correct, Connor? Daniel says, when are the metal mechs going to be available again? Thanks for asking about that, Daniel. Yeah, we did sell out of them recently, and we are working on another print run. So probably Q4, so that's around October, November of this year, we'll have more of those in stock. Let's see. Stefan recommends Dwellings of Eldervale as a game that's easy to set up. That's a game that's on my list as one that I really want to play, but I don't know anyone in the area who has access to it. Tim mentioned that Azul Summer Pavilion is getting an expansion called Glazed Pavilion. Ooh, interesting. That is my favorite Azul, so I'll have to check that out. Casimir says, can you tell us the name of the typeface used for the Red Rising logo and card titles? I don't know that offhand, Casimir, but maybe a graphic designer watching this will know what those fonts are called. Christopher says, you had a video about 3 years ago actually, talking about a failed design for Red Rising. 4 failed designs. I tried multiple times. What kept you trying to design a Red Rising game and not just ending the project and starting something new? I mean, honestly, for a while after that, I was like, I can't figure it out. This will just have to be something I love and share, but I don't publish a game in that world. But it just clicked one day when I was playing Fantasy Realms with Alex at a game night. It just clicked. I think maybe it helped that I had not thought about it for a while, that I'd given it a little bit of a break, and that helped us figure it out. Yeah. Connor says, I shipped to the U.S. because it's the biggest market and costs have jumped three to 4 times. So Connor, just to clarify that, on a per unit level, are you saying that a game that once cost you $1 to ship is now costing you $4 to freight ship? That seems higher than what I've seen, but I just want to clarify that. Or are you saying that you've seen the price go up multiple times, but it's not a multiplier of 3 or 4? Donnie says, do you have any blog posts about contracts between designers and publishers? I do, Donnie. I don't know how I labeled the link offhand, but if you look on Stonemaier Games in fact, if you look on the How to Design a Tabletop Game section, I'm pretty sure that I've linked to designer contracts there. And you can see either a sample of a contract or just the types of things that I think about in the designer contract. I'm almost positive it's there. If it's not, let me know and I will write one. But I think I've already written one. Kevin says, any update on the Red Rising boats? Yeah, the update so far is that the boat I think has arrived in Australia and the shipping will start there soon. Australia and New Zealand. The boat in the UK for Europe has arrived, but I don't think they've received it yet. I'm looking over for updates over here. No update yet. And then the boats for Canada and the US are still on track for what we knew during the pre-order, which was that they would arrive in late March and shipping will begin in April. Yeah. Let's see. Eric says he works in finance and would also recommend using a bookkeeper. Yeah. That's new to me, but definitely a great recommendation. Kevin says he's teaching Scythe to some new people this weekend. Is there any one tip that I should give them? Well, for you as the teacher, Kevin, I would recommend a couple things. One, I would recommend giving everyone the reference card that gives them recommendations for what to think about on their first few turns of the game. I would also recommend for you as the teacher to help them take the first few turns of the game. Just that way, you don't have to sit through a long rules explanation. You can just in real time say, okay, this is how the move action works as you take the move action for the player to your left, and then teach another action for the next player. Um, for those new players, one overarching thing for them to think about is to focus. Pick one thing, one of the goals, one of the bottom row goals, for example, to focus on, and focus on completing that goal. So if someone says, "I love the mechs in this game. The mechs looks cool," have them focus on making 4 mechs and completing that goal. Because I think players oftentimes the first time they play side, they can still have fun doing this, but one of the things that they do is they try to do a little bit of everything, and you can't get stars if you do a little bit of everything. So have them focus on maybe 1 or 2 specific things and get that sense of completion for that thing. And they can even use the player mat as a guide for that. If there's one of the bottom row actions that has a bunch of coins associated with it, they can use that as a guide for what they choose to pursue. Thank you for teaching it, though. I really do appreciate that. Let's see. Alfredo says, is tracking available for international orders? Yes, whenever your order ships, you will get a tracking notification. Yeah. Connor says, soccer, what position? I was usually goalie, sometimes defense. I played in high school. I played on my high school team and on a club team, and actually played opposite positions. On my high school team, I played forward. Speed was my main factor, so I played forward. But I wasn't a great goal scorer. I don't know why the coach decided to put me up there, but I was forward in high school for my high school team, and for my club team, I played marking back, one of the exterior defensive positions, and that I really enjoyed. That was probably my favorite position because I loved being able to take the ball away from slower opponents, and I loved being able to have the vision of the whole field in front of me and to distribute the ball upfield with as much precision as possible. And every now and then, like you see in professional soccer, you see some of those outside defenders come up the lines and into a temporary attacking position, which I really enjoyed that as well. Brian says, do I play fantasy football? No, I do play fantasy baseball. That's the only fantasy sport that I play. And March Madness, if you count that as a fantasy sport. Carol just dropped by today. Carol says, have I heard anything on Geekway to the West? She says she's getting her second vaccination this week and starting to think about conventions. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're getting your second vaccination. I can't wait for mine, or can't wait for my first vaccination. Geekway, as far as I know, that they're not doing anything in the spring. They're just doing a convention in October or November, and I will still be a little nervous by then, but we'll see how all these vaccinations come through and if people actually take them. So if they do, and I'll see how Geekway responds to that and encourages people to get vaccinated for that convention. Chad says, how far into Dune did it take you to not be lost? It took him about a fourth of the book until he had his bearings. How long did it take me? I mean, I've tried to read Dune twice. The first time I did get lost and didn't get pulled into the world because it really does throw you into the world. It doesn't explain a lot. And so I gave up on it that time, but I've returned to it, and I would say it's about, you have to get through a good maybe 50 to 100 pages before things start to make sense. And even then, not everything makes sense, but you kind of become okay with that because you trust the author that things will make sense later. And I'm currently 80% of the way through. Tim says that Viticulture landed on the Watch It Played Momentum Top 10 trending list for March. That's fun. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that. Okay, Aqua's back about N.K. Jemisin. He says the 100,000 Kingdoms, and it's called the Inheritance Cycle. That's one of the book series from N.K. Jemisin that I was recommending that I really love. Dusty says, he's quoting me, I don't need another Marvel game. And he says, that's it. The mill is done. I can't work with this man. I love Marvel. I really do. I'll gladly take more Marvel shows and movies. Just finished WandaVision. Loved it. And honestly, I will take more Marvel games. I'll take more Star Wars games. I'll take more Lord of the Rings games. But I do love seeing more smaller works of fiction, smaller IPs being brought to life in board game form as well. I think sometimes it's just those big IPs become the go-to IPs. Multiple people have clarified that Loki's real name is Tom Hiddleston. Or Tom, I think Tom Hiddleston is correct. Tim said Tom Middleton, but I think Hiddleston is correct. And Tim says right, yeah. Ivan says, I would love to hear your opinion on the first Dune book, especially since you've read the Red Rising series, and I went the opposite way. Yeah, I'll post about it on my personal blog, jamiestegmeyer.com soon. But overall, I'm just really enjoying the book. It's not at all what I expected. It's yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but I am really most of all, I'm enjoying the world building. The world building is incredible, especially down to like the depths of how the Fremen value water so much, and the lengths that they go to get that water. That to me is just fascinating. Like the author just went into a deep dive into this very specific topic of water and how this one culture values it. So I think that's fascinating. Dylan also asked, what's my favorite book of the Red Rising series? Oh, and he threw out a shameless plug, which I want to mention even more, that his wife, Dara, recently published a novel, and it's called Rise of the Dragon Queen. I have not read it yet, but I look forward to reading it, and thank you, Dylan, for sharing that. My favorite book in the Red Rising series is probably a very close tie between 1 and 3 out of the 5 books published so far. Okay, I asked that Everdell question a few minutes ago. Shannon says, I have all of Everdell. I didn't care about the combo price. My dilemma was paying for the big box and debating if it was worth it for the storage, especially when the original boxes are so beautiful. It's $99 for the new expansions and the big box. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Shannon. Greg also says that it's the biggest complaint. The pricing and people who have already have Everdell and the price of the consolidated version is the biggest complaint in the Everdell comment section of the campaign so far. Let's see. Carol says she's definitely put off a little bit by the Everdell pricing as someone there from the start. Okay, Carol was there from the start. However, it won't let me bug me. She loves the game and the production. Grand scheme of things, not going to let something like that get to me. I think that's a very generous, kind perspective there, Carol. Chad says, would you say that someone could have a satisfying end to the Red Rising series if they stop after the 3rd book? Yeah, I think they could. Yeah. I mean, the 4th and 5th books are different, very different in scope and character perspectives that you get to see there. But yeah, if you end after the first trilogy and you're happy with that, yeah, I think you could totally just have a satisfying. Yeah, it definitely the book 3 doesn't like leave you with any cliffhangers to wonder about book 4. Book 3 and the first trilogy is completely complete. So feel free to launch into that trilogy knowing that you will get a complete story from books 1 through 3. Yeah. It really is the second trilogy, kind of like what Brandon Sanderson did with the Mistborn series, where he has the first trilogy and then he jumps forward in time and does a completely separate trilogy. And you could easily start with that trilogy, read either trilogy by itself, and be fine. Yeah. Daniel says, is there a mechanism or theme that is attractive for you like Red Rising? You've designed a pretty diverse themes and mechanisms so far. Is there a mechanism or theme that is attractive to you for, I think you're saying for liking Red Rising? For me, it's that mechanism of choosing which card in your hand to get rid of, when to get rid of it, and where to get rid of it, and then which card to pick up. I mean, that very simple handcrafting mechanism, but have multiple rewards on your turn. So you're getting something when you're putting a card down. You're getting something when you pull a card up. Not only get a card, but you're also getting a location bonus from that card. I think that simple give and take mechanism feels really good to me in Red Rising, as well as like the decision of when do I stop doing that? When do I just say I'm really happy with my turn? I'll take a scout turn this turn, and knowing that you're probably giving up on some things to do that, but your combo might be good enough at that point that it's worth it. That's my favorite mechanism, I think, in the game. But I do have a favorite mechanism video about Red Rising if you want to check that out and delve a little bit deeper. Let's see. Looking through comments about Everdell here. James says, as someone who had to go aftermarket and definitely overpaid compared to those previous backers, I can't help but feel this speaks to people's own entitlement rather than fairness. There's certainly, I mean, I don't want to dismiss valid complaints as entitlement, but Kickstarter, I've certainly seen entitlement on Kickstarter before, so that is something to keep an eye on when you look at those complaints. George asked for a redux of chocolate of the day, and it is the Cadbury mini eggs here, and some donuts. Get some donuts. Justin says he's coming in late here, but I'll answer a few more questions. Justin says he wanted to see if you had to choose one Stonemaier game to show someone what Stonemaier Games is all about. Which game would you choose? That's tough. If you want to see in this, so my thought went to Wingspan first because it is our most popular game. But Wingspan does have rounds, and many of our games do not have rounds. We've kind of moved away from rounds. And there's Scythe, but Scythe is the only game that has combat in it, and our games really aren't much about combat. That's hard to say, Justin. That is really, really hard to say. And Tapestry, I could go with Tapestry, but Tapestry is such an expensive game that it isn't necessarily indicative of all of our other games. I would go with Viticulture, actually. Viticulture, I think, is pretty indicative of a lot of the design philosophies that we have in many of our games. It's not entirely indicative of that. It does have rounds, like Wingspan does have rounds, but I think it flows really well. It's very easy to teach. It's easy to set up. Yeah, I might go with Viticulture there, Justin, even though that is our first game. Viticulture or Wingspan? Yeah. Kevin says, do I watch the reviews of games you design and or publish? I do not. In fact, if you check out my article, Kevin, about reviewers, I posted this article a couple times, but the latest one I posted a few months ago. I kind of go out of the way to really reinforce the idea that I do not watch reviews of Stonemaier games. And that is not because I don't want feedback. I get plenty of feedback from playtesters and from other people who play the games, but I want to remain completely unbiased when I send out review copies on a human level, so that I am not only picking reviewers that like our games or only picking reviewers that happen to hate our games. I don't even know it. I want to send our games out to a wide variety of reviewers, with the only requirement being that if they accept a free game, if they request and accept a free game, that they actually do review it in a timely manner. That's it. That's the only thing I ask. Beyond that, I have no idea what reviewers say about our games. If you look at any of the links to reviews on our website, you will probably find some very negative reviews among those links that I have no idea are there. Because all I do when a reviewer sends me a link to a game that they reviewed, I put it on our website. I have no idea whether or not they actually like the game or not. So I want reviewers to have that complete freedom to say whatever they want about our games. And I want backers, consumers, gamers to get completely unbiased opinions from those reviewers. So I haven't, that's a long answer, but yeah, I have no idea what reviewers say about my games. Patrick says, have I played Flourish yet? He says his wife and I played our first game last night and enjoyed it. No, I have not played Flourish yet, Patrick. I haven't actually even heard of that, so I'll have to check that one out. Casimir found the font for Red Rising. He called it, this doesn't ring a bell for me, so it might be a little different or a slight variation. He called it Sincil Decorative. Yeah. Thank you, Cody, again, for posting some links to these videos. One or two more questions, then I got to go. Edgar says, what was the weirdest complaint that you got from gamers about one of your games that was totally justified from your end? Weirdest complaint that was totally justified. So one thing that I learned, I learned this from my little side. A few people said that they thought the player mats felt flimsy, even though it's perfectly durable cardboard. But the reason we did that is that we have gotten more complaints from gamers about thicker player mats that warp. Because over time, in any environment, a thicker player mat is going to warp a little bit unless you are storing it perfectly pressed, perfectly flat all the time in the perfect environment. And so we have moved towards, like in My Little Scythe and in Pendulum and in Tapestry, we've moved towards thinner player mats because they don't warp. They're just as durable and they don't warp. So that's my justification. I don't know if it's completely fair because it is nice. The feel of a thicker player mat is nice, but I don't want player mats to warp. I know that's annoying. So that's that would be my answer to your question, Edgar. Daniel says, is there a mechanism or theme that you'd like to design a new game for? There are lots of mechanisms that I love that I haven't designed games in yet. One is a one-way action selection track, like in Tokaido or in Parks. I love that mechanism. I love Tug of War. I haven't designed a game with Tug of War yet. I love I Cut You Choose or I Press You Choose. Haven't designed a game with that yet. So yeah, there are quite a few. All right, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, here we go. Well, one last question. John says, have I tried the Gallerist yet? I did play the Gallerist years ago, just one time though. Yeah. All right, went a little bit long today, but it was totally worth it to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for joining me with these questions. And I will put this up on YouTube. If you have any questions that occur to you while you're watching this or later, throw them up on YouTube, the YouTube version of it, so I will get notifications for them. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wingspan week. Go play Wingspan this week and post photos of your favorite moments in the game that you play of Wingspan this week. And I will, and tag me on social media so I can actually see it. Take care. Have a great week and a great Wednesday. Bye.